Hello everyone, once again welcome to my video of today where I explain and take you through climate change risk management planning, which is also a build-up and a continuation of the previous video where we discussed things related to climate change risk reduction, discussed different risk reduction measures in different sectors and particularly in the agroecological setting. And of course looked at how each of them is able to create impact or contribute to risk reduction. Once again, my name is John Sekajigo. I'm a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University in the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences in the Department of Environment, Natural Resources and Tourism. So today we discuss climate change risk management planning, which is the last component of climate change risk management. This is also an integral part of the whole risk assessment and reduction assignment, including impact identification, including vulnerability, including adaptation capacity assessment. Okay? So when you do all those assessments, the next thing is to come up with a plan. How you are going to bring all what you have been doing, right from climate change analysis, understanding how the climate is going to change, understanding the impacts it's going to cause, understanding the different exposed elements, understanding their vulnerabilities, both in the present and the future. Now, also identifying the different risk reduction measures. Then you need understanding all the stakeholders that are involved. You need now to come up with a plan on how you are going now to deal with the risks, how you are going to manage the risk. And here I take you through the risk management planning, which is just an integral part of all the other processes that we have gone through in the previous videos. So based on the climate change modeling results and the field assessments, of course regarding the current and likely impacts, the vulnerability and adaptive capacities and coping strategy of these. So the visioning and risk management planning begins in a participatory manner. You need to use a participatory approach. You need to involve all the stakeholders that are component part of the risk management in this process. So you go and start visioning. How do you want your management strategy? How do you want your climate to be? How you want your community, your society, your country to be in terms of managing and dealing with climate change risks? It should therefore not be treated as a standalone activity, because this benefits from the previous process that we discussed. It benefits from climate analysis, it benefits from vulnerability assessments, it benefits from exposure assessment, it benefits from the identification of potential risk reduction strategies. Okay, so it begins with community visioning. Okay, planning begins with community visioning. It is important to engage the local communities in thinking and trying to see themselves in the future. If the climate is likely to be like this in the next 30 years, let the community understand and see themselves in 30 years. How do they want to be? If you are a country, you are a district, you are a region, you start thinking and trying to see yourselves in the next 30, 50, 100 years. Okay? Visioning. Okay? You start visioning to see how do you want you to be? How do you want your systems to be? And this allows you or allows the communities to list risk reduction options that best fit their conditions and can best be implemented in the existing capacities. Okay? They should be guided, the people, it could be communities, it could be the district, it could be the country, by the experts to develop different visions from which a common one can be drawn and fine-tuned. So you, the expert or the facilitator, you guide the communities, you guide these stakeholders into visioning and developing different visions based on the scenarios and their knowledge, and then be able to guide them and help them to fine-tune these and come up with one vision that is fine-tuned. And it should be understood that these local communities or local people, through their social cultural settings and indigenous way of responding to problems, build experiences over time, and therefore develop and implement strategies to cope with and build resilience to climate change. So don't think they are at zero. These people always have the capacity. They have been dealing with these shocks and hazards. So they have ways they have built over time through their social cultural settings and indigenous ways. And it is important to allow them to build on these experiences to come up with very good plans on how they will deal with climate change risks. Sometimes when hazards hit and people get problems, we tend to react by giving them an aid and give them emergency responses, but we never imagine and think how would these people cope with these risks after? One day you have given them food for 2 days. How do they live and manage after that for the next months and years? So they are not at zero. They know they have been dealing with this, and therefore we should facilitate them to build on these experiences to be able to come up with very good risk management plans and risk reduction strategies. To manage the risks of climate change, it is necessary to define how climate is projected to change in the future. Scenario planning, how it is likely. If it changes like this, what can we do to counteract the impacts? This is achieved by using climate change scenarios, of course. If it changes, if we use this model, if land cover changes like this, if population changes like this, how is the climate likely to change? Now, based on those climate change scenarios, we shall get a good summary of the changes in climate that could manifest in the targeted areas. And then this provides us with a consistent, efficient basis for assessing the climate-related risks across different organizations, across different landscapes, across different regions, across different countries, and across different continents. Okay? Once we do this, then we can be able to go into the participatory scenario planning, which will involve all the key stakeholders in building and discussing scenarios of possible changes in the climate. So, this will include partly looking at the decline, deciding on the time horizons, and here participants will propose and decide on the planning periods. Should we plan for 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years? Yeah? Okay. What is known about the climate changes and the areas where projections are highly uncertain or cannot be made? It is of course suggested that the time periods should be broken into short term, 5 or 10, into immediate or intermediate terms, 20 years, and longer term, which could be up to 50 years. Once we have we have decided on the time horizons, we start exploring the possible changes in climate. And this will involve discussing the likely changes in climate variables with the associated impacts. And of course, modeling the results and the field assessments will feed into here. And once we have done that, we identify the scenarios. Once the likely changes are explored and tabulated, then we can look at the different scenarios, and then we can look at the uncertainties, and of course look at the different scenarios, and then we can consider of course impacts on communities and societies, and based on these we can be able to know the impacts and be able to of course come up with risk reduction options. Of course, then we start prioritizing the risk reduction strategies, because like you said, we have different planning horizons, different implementation periods, short term, medium term, long term. Then also we need to prioritize these reduction options. What should we begin with? What should come next? What should come last? So using a set of criterion or the habit of these risk reduction strategies, for example, to address climate-related issues, to improve livelihoods, to improve resilience, then we can be able to prioritize which ones we should implement and which ones we should not. So the habit of a measure, for example, to restore an integrity of an ecosystem, potential to enhance livelihoods, potential to contribute to greenhouse gas emission reduction can be part of the criterion. Of course, budgeting and financing options could be another thing to look at in the overall risk management planning, and taking care, incorporating it in the overall plan. A good plan, of course, should integrate an estimation of the risk reduction measures and possible intervention measures.